rivalry week is in the books, and they are who we thought they were. It was a rough go in both the Civil War and Apple Cup. Oregon State and Oregon were tied at the end of the first quarter. Washington State were competitive at least early, and then the talent, the cream rose to the top there. So not our best rivalry week, but I think we maybe learned a couple things.
Well, look, I think the Apple Cup was a 7 or 10 point game at the start of the fourth quarter. So, if you're Washington State, you found a quarterback, right? You've been playing 3, so it sounds like you settled, which is good. You showed fight and effort. Oregon State is trying to spin this, which is, we'll talk about it. I think it's weird. I don't know if I've ever seen a game, and maybe this is indicative of where Oregon State's at. I don't, and I'm being dead serious. I've been doing this now for, I think, 22 years, and I played for, my whole life, and from little kid to high school to college to, the NFL. I don't know if I've ever looked at a box score that was 41-7. One team had 147 yards and the other team had 585. One team had 67 yards rushing, the other had 280. And somehow the narrative has been spun that something's wrong with the team that had 41 and the team that had 7
feels
somehow
pretty good about themselves.
Something positive about it. So, narratives are hard. You can spin them any way you want. I always say that, like, that's sprinkling bark dust. You can take the world's crappiest yard, sprinkle some bark dust on it, all of a sudden it looks pretty good. So maybe there's some sprinkling of some bark dust from Oregon State and Washington State. I think Washington State, feels a little better today, or should, than what Oregon State does. But I guess if you want to say that you can take some positives out of it, you can. I would, if I look hard enough, I'll see that. But at the end of the day, if 41-7 and 147 to 585, if that ends up being what you're taking positive, to me, that just speaks volumes about where your program's at right now, if you're Oregon State. But again, you're trying to be positive. You're trying to, I don't expect anyone to come out and say that we're terrible and we can't win and this is embarrassment and all that. So I don't fault you for trying to spin it. And it feels like in some ways with some of the fan base, maybe it's working. So if you can sell someone something and they'll buy it, by all means, continue to sell it.
Yeah, we'll start with the Civil War. Oregon wins 41-7. The end of the first quarter, 7-7. Oregon State put together a drive. Oregon stalled out on a couple of overthrows. And then Dan Lanning woke the team up a little bit. They had a better second quarter. And you could tell going into the locker room that they were going to come out in the third and lay the smackdown. They did. It was 41-7. And to be honest, I felt like, and Bray said this, that there was a feeling among Oregon State that, like, hey, this went okay.
Yeah.
This was your rival that you used to beat. And the first half wasn't very good. Now, the first quarter, Oregon had some overthrows and you got to stop. And so that's nice. You didn't embarrass yourself in special teams, although that came later. You put one drive together and then didn't get a first down again, I don't think, until the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I don't see, Trent Bray, I think, said something along the lines of that first half shows who we could be. Now, I know Oregon didn't just score 5 touchdowns in the second quarter.
Yeah.
Go back and watch that second quarter. Oregon absolutely dominated in the trenches. Oregon State could do absolutely nothing on offense. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't throw. Malik Murphy completed 5 passes out of 18 the entire game for 68 yards. He averaged 3.8 yards per drop back. That's horrific. Those are
let's be honest. They had one drive, right? If you're going to try to hold on to something here, is the second drive, right? They did the 3 and out. I think they got like 2 yards and they punted the ball. And then Oregon, and that was where Oregon gave it up on downs. That was the Dante Moore overthrows. And you could tell he was a little jazzed up. I guess that game, he said, took some special meaning because of the embarrassment he had at UCLA, losing in Corvallis. And, he got benched in that game. He said he actually watched that game with Dan Lanning, and I think he came out a little bit jazzed up. So It's 7-0, and Oregon State goes on that drive, and it was a good drive, right? They had like an 11-yard run, which I think might have been their best play all day, if I'm not mistaken. They had an 11-yard run, a couple decent passes, and they drove. I want to pull it up in front of me. They went 13 plays, 64 yards, put it in the end zone.
Yeah, it was a good drive.
And I remember kind of sitting there being like, okay, all right. And then they forced Oregon on the punt, and I think I even tweeted out, I was like, hey, someone forgot to tell Oregon State to not show up. Mm-hmm. Oregon State's going to play hard, and they're here for a fight. And I said, rivalries matter, and that's good. I wanted to see Oregon State come out and give effort, and they did. Mm-hmm. And then after that, whatever you want to call it, there was nothing Oregon State was going to do. No. Because after that, Oregon decided to wake up. Maybe they were looking ahead to Penn State. Maybe it's just a rivalry game, and give Oregon State some credit. They came out and played hard. But once that happened, once they went on that drive, I'm guessing that Tosh Lupoi and Dan Lanning, my guess, had some colorful things to say to the Oregon defense.
I guarantee they did. Yeah.
That were getting some push off the ball. We were texting back and forth with each other. And, we mentioned one of our big concerns was the Oregon D-line. And I thought against Northwestern, there was some movement there. And there were some things to concern because Oregon wants to play that 5 DB look. Mm-hmm. And against Northwestern, they had to get out of it. They had to bring in an extra linebacker. And that's not the way Oregon wants to play. Oregon wants to play that 4-2-5, right? And they play that star or the nickel, whatever you want to call that, right? That's how they want to play. And Northwestern forced out of it. And I sat there for a minute and was like, oh my God, are we seeing something here? And Oregon was like, no, you're not seeing something here. And then Oregon State's offense had zero to offer the rest of the game. Mm-hmm. So for Trent Bray, if you want to say that's who you can be, I mean, if you want to say a drive, if you want to say one drive and then one defensive drive, maybe. So, but outside of that, if someone's trying to spin this as anything other than Oregon State for a drive on offense and maybe 2 drives on defense, I thought put up a hell of an effort. And then the dam burst. That's, and if you're trying to spin this any other way, then that's just what it is it's spin, because that was the truth of the matter, is that game was competitive for 3 drives, 2 on the defensive side of the ball. And you can say that maybe that was overthrows on an excited Dante Moore, and 1 really, really good offensive drive where I was impressed. And then, like you said, after that, I don't think there was a first down until the 4th quarter. And, that's the reality. That's the matchup that we thought we were going to get 4 quarters of that, and it wasn't. And then I guess if you want to try to put some spin on, Oregon State made Oregon work. Like when we saw against Texas Tech, you saw against when Oregon State played Oklahoma State, it was just 30-yard touchdown runs, 40-yard touchdown throws. Oregon State made them work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to say that, you made them go on some drives. You made them take 8 plays. So I'm looking here at the Oregon drives, 8 plays, touchdown, 11 plays, touchdown, 11 plays, field goal. You made them.
You kept everything. You kept everything in front.
Kept everything in front. The tackling was a little better.
So, it was. The tackling was better. They gave effort, and that's I guess what I'm getting at with Oregon State is what I don't like about what Trent Bray said is that he's making the bar incredibly low for his team. Yes. He's making the bar. You guys showed up. You tried. We tackled well. Nobody quit on the field. Nobody fought on the field. We weren't yelling at each other. We stayed together as a team, and it's it's okay if we say that. We want to see effort. We want to see them try. Your coach should not be satisfied with, we tried hard and we tackled. Dude, you were quadrupled in yards. You completed 30-ish% of your passes and averaged 2 yards a carry. And if you take out that first drive, it was more like 1.5 yards a carry. I mean, that's rough. I just don't like where Oregon State's barometer is. And the call is coming from inside the house. I mean, I get it if fans say that. Again, I get it if you're a fan and you go, hey, we tackled, we showed up in that first quarter, that was cool. Trent Bray should not be saying that. This is a program that could be like a Boise State or a Fresno State. This is a program that had the resources and the recruiting power to be the bully of the Mountain West. That's who they could have easily been, and that's what you would think a Jonathan Smith team would have been. Some of the Mike Riley teams, that's what you think they would have been. This team is I mean, that's what Portland State's coach says. We tried hard the whole game.
I mean, you said it. Ultimately, if you want to know where this program's at, and and that'll be up for other people to decide, people above certainly our pay grade. That's for, Scott Barnes and people that are above him to decide, where the state of this program is. But you are correct in that you knew going into this game, the game was not going to be competitive. The game was not competitive. Just wasn't. You can say it wasn't. Everything, the numbers bear it out. And that's why I said it's weird living in a world where 41-7, 147 to 585, and somehow the narrative is that Oregon doesn't look very good and Oregon State is on the right path. That's just it's all spin. But you're right in that last year a Boise State team, which has less resources than Oregon State, should have beat Oregon. Boise State was better than Oregon last year minus special teams. Their depth wasn't as good as Oregon's, right? Plain and simple. And we've seen teams from lower levels be competitive in these games. We've seen teams with big talent gaps go out and fight your ass off. And Idaho last year was a great example. I'll even say Washington State. The talent gap between Washington State and Washington, I don't know if it's as great as Oregon State, but it's a big ass gap. And Washington State was competitive. Now, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. Washington's offense, and we'll get to that, Washington's offense is really good. Yeah. I mean, they got a three-headed monster up there in Seattle that no one's talking about. And this may sound sacrilegious to Duck fans. It's better than what Oregon has.
Oh, I almost tweeted it. It was like, I'm going to get in trouble. But it is.
It's true.
If we're counting running back, if we're just saying QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1.
It's the best trio. It's the best trio on the West Coast, and it's one of the best trios in the country. Yep. Now, again, I don't think Washington's defense and is that great, but Washington State was outmatched and outgunned, and they didn't roll. Now, granted, in fourth quarter, again, that got out of control.
It got wonky, and Jed Fish was going to do that. We said that.
And by the way, it should. When you're playing against, when you're Washington State and you're dealing with what you're dealing with, and you have now lost 2 Heisman Trophy level quarterbacks in back-to-back, where Cam Ward leaves and then John Mateer leaves, and you lose your coach and your roster gets plugged, just like Oregon State's does. Okay. And this is my problem that I have with Oregon State trying to sit here and put bark dust on this turd. Washington State's 2-2. Washington State found a way. Washington State beat San Diego State. Lo and behold, San Diego State beat Cal. And I know that's the whole,
what's
the old, what do they call it? The trans property. What is it?
Transitive property.
Transitive property. Yeah. I was like, what do they call that? Where you beat this team there, but still.
So Grambling State is the national champion because if they beat them and they beat them,
But maybe San Diego State isn't as bad as we thought, right? And Washington State found a way. Washington State found a way to win a close game against Idaho. And they took that Apple Cup, they took it into the fourth quarter. And yes, they got overwhelmed. But if the narrative that Oregon State is trying to spin, they're trying to say that they were Washington State. No. And that's not the case. It was not a 7-point game. Now I was looking here, going into that fourth quarter, before Washington ran away with it. That was a 7-point game.
It was 31-24 at the
start. 31-24 at the start of the fourth quarter. Yep. And it never really felt like that game was in doubt because that Washington was not going to get stopped.
Right.
But if you want to sit here and try to spin it as one team was competitive and the plucky team, that's Washington State. Well, Oregon State, you want to make that case. And so I think that's the frustrating part is you see where Washington State's at, you see where Boise State's at, and you see where even, my God, San Diego State, Fresno State, it's a team you lost to. Yeah. That's the frustrating part is that I understand that it's bad and no one's blaming Oregon State for what happened to him. What happened to him absolutely sucked, but don't whisper sweet nothings in my ear and tell me that this is who we could be when you've had now a year plus to be responsible for how it is and try to sell me that 41-7. I'll listen to 24-59 that game was closer than that. I'll listen to the Apple Cup one.
It was closer than that until the fourth quarter. I mean, it was back and forth.
I can't really listen to the Civil War was, and neither game was ever in doubt, but don't try to spin that on me that was some sort of effort about what we could be. Now moving forward, if you're the Beavs, show me. If you're going to sit here and tell me the Civil War was some sort of turning point and that you had things going in the right direction, go beat Houston and beat App State. Go run off 6 in a row. Yeah. Oregon State fan that thinks that I'm being too negative or this and that. Go run off 6 in a row, right? Go run off 6 in a row against teams that, by the way, you can run off 6 in a row against. Teams that you should. You should
If
be.
you are who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then now go do
you
it.
should not be afraid of Wake Forest and Tulsa.
Yes. So, but the Civil War, narrative that's kind of being put out there, it's still a weird. That's a weird thing, and I think that's just kind of the act of a desperate place right now, trying to put some sort of positive spin on it. Because I'm not hearing that out of Washington State. I'm just not. And
no, that was my point. They've handled this totally different.
Yes.
Whereas Oregon State has always said, from top brass down, kind of like, look what happened to us. We're going to try to make the best of it, but you guys kind of put us in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Washington State and the Palouse mentality, man, they just keep rolling. You're going to take Cam Ward, we'll go get a John Mateer. You're going to take John Mateer. Okay, we're not going to start the year 0-4 and cry about it. You're going to take our coach. We're going to go get somebody. We're just not going to get whoever's willing to stay forever. Yeah. They've handled it totally differently, and you can see that on the field. You can see that in the product. It's very obvious. Yeah. From an Oregon standpoint, there were Oregon fans that were like concerned about this game or the start, and it was like, they just didn't take this team seriously. No. They physically dominated. The reason they didn't get a sack is not because they couldn't get pressure. Oregon State's game plan was, we're not letting Malik Murphy get hit. Just get rid of the ball as soon as you possibly can. Yeah. And that's why his completion percentage was so low. Literally more than even getting first downs. Yeah. It was get the ball out. Yes. And so he did. And they weren't open, and so they didn't complete a lot of passes.
Well, this is one of those things too. We always say that sacks to me is the most overrated stat in all of football, but especially in the world of college ball, because you see this all the time where a guy will come out of college and he doesn't have many sacks. You kind of look at his production, and you're like, dude, he had 4 sacks in 2 years playing in the SEC, and then he goes in the NFL, and the dude's a freaking monster. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, what's the difference? Well, in the NFL, it's not all quick game, right? It's not all just, one step, get the ball out and run gimmicky offenses. If you don't have, 25 to 30 drop packs a game, how am I supposed to rush the passer? I mean, half the time in college, you even see these elite pass rushers not even really rushing. It's more of, I'm playing edge contained to make sure, and then I'm trying to get my hands up and knock it down.
That's what Georgia does. Georgia's had a number of edge rushers that have gone in the first round, and people say, we don't know, their sack numbers are low. Well, they're not asking the edges to get around the edge.
They just kind of squeeze the pocket, make sure that mobile quarterbacks stay
make you uncomfortable, and you stay there. Yep.
And so those are two totally different things. So yeah, the idea that that Oregon State had any sort of pass protection is just foolish.
Oregon got no sacks, and from the first snap to the last, they put the fear of God in Malik Murphy.
Yes.
You could tell. The number of times he threw off his back foot, the number of times he threw the ball way too early. The pass rush was effective. They got no sacks, and it scared them. I mean, it did. You could tell they were spooked, and their play calling showed that they were spooked. That was one of my takeaways is don't worry about the pass rush. The slow start doesn't surprise me. Some of the things that I saw in this game that I thought were interesting, and there's good and bad here. I think Oregon has an established wide receiver too. DeCorian Moore is a stud, and we can get to that. Like, he is unreal. That back shoulder throw where he caught the ball, there are so many guys, and I've talked to people about this weekend. There are receivers, and they're just playmakers who are kind of satisfied with, I made the play.
Yeah.
And then there's those special athletes who just kind of thirst to do the next thing, and they're so athletic that they can. A lot of guys on that fade go down. Or they, especially when they're a freshman, they catch it. Hey, I caught it. I'll get my foot in bounds, and I'm willing to go down. He landed on his feet, and then not only was that not enough, then he fought until he reached the end zone. That is such an elite body control play, hand strength play. That is an unbelievable play for a freshman. And I know it looked good. I don't think the average person understands how special that play is. Yeah. That's like a Jamar Chase play. It is. It's that not very big receiver that can still be incredibly physical. So he's wide receiver 1, and he is as advertised. And then I said, where's the depth? Because we don't know who's going to step up. Malik Benson is stepping up.
He's the guy.
And Malik Benson is clearly wide receiver 2, and he made some plays. And I talked about this too this weekend chatting with people. He made some plays that even if you're not, it doesn't matter who your opponent is. Those catches on the sideline where you have strong hands, you have the body control to get a foot in bounds. it doesn't matter who the DB is. That's a receiver skill. That's an awareness. That's a savviness thing that you can say that's going to translate no matter who the opponent is. He's showing skill sets. And I think Malik Benson has clearly established himself as wide receiver 2. And whereas I thought the wide receiver room was maybe a question coming into the year, true freshman we'd never seen, a transfer, some young guys, I now actually feel pretty good about that wide receiver room.
Yeah. And then you throw Sadiq in it, and you mentioned that you kind of wanted to see a little bit more out of him, and I think he ended up with 4 catches as well. So again,
he has a really hard time. He is a clunky, as natural as DeCorian Moore is with his hands. Like his hands are always in the right place when he catches a ball. He never looks like he's fighting it and whatever. Yeah. Sadiq almost always, if it's not pinned on his chest, looks like he's thinking, catch the ball. Okay. Now go be a freak. He's not a real natural catcher of the ball. And we don't see them use him in a way where he has to go up 20 yards downfield. They don't have him run down the seam. And if you're that good an athlete and you can catch the ball, you'd think either that's coming, and it could be, it could be.
Well, remember, this is only the first. Yeah, they don't trust it. But this is also the first year that he's really been the guy, and maybe you'll see an expanded role. And also there was some more of the 12 personnel stuff where you're putting Jamari Johnson on the field too, who's another big body. Saw him make a couple catches. But I think you're just seeing kind of the pecking order kind of work itself out, and we knew it would. And that's the same thing in the backfield as well.
So and that's where my question is. I have a question there.
What do you got?
Well, Jaden Lamar's not the guy.
No, but here's the thing.
And he's not RB2 either.
I do think he is. He may not be at the end of the year. See, right now, with Whittington being out, and I think he could have played. He was in uniform, but they didn't need him in that. I think Whittington's still the guy. I think Whittington and Lamar will be your 1-2 punch. Now, I get it that Lamar may not be the high-end talent. And the interesting thing is the 2 guys that are playing behind them, and that is going to be Hill Jr. and Davidson. Those are going to be the stars.
Oh, but they'll be better than Whittington.
And they will be. But Whittington and Lamar, I think right now are the 2 guys that the team trusts. They've been in the program. They trust him in pass protection. I was talking to Dan Lanning before the Civil War on the show, and I asked him about Hill, who is the home run hitter. He's the most explosive guy in their backfield. And I'm telling you, in 2 years, that guy will be an NFL player.
Oh, 3.
Well, yes. Well, 3.
Yeah.
Or if he leaves early, right? True. So my point is that will be the next. He will be the next star at Oregon. There is a different wiggle and there is a different juice behind that cat. I can see him and Jordan Davidson kind of being that LaMichael James, Kenyon Barner sort of. Davidson clearly is the bowling ball back. He can play some of the fullback in there and be more when you want to run a 2-back set. And he's got a nose for the goal line, and he runs like a truck. So I think as this goes on, you'll see those 2 guys will end up being them. But to me, the pecking order is you're going to see less of Riggs. You're going to see less. I think Mekhi Hughes. I think that ship has sailed. I think when you see this fully operational, it will be Whittington and Lamar getting the bulk of the carries, and then as the younger guys kind of come along. And I mentioned I was talking with Dan Lanning, and I said, how much of early playing as a running back? Because we always don't give credit we think running back is an easy position, right? Mm-hmm. See hole run. Right. And so much of being a running back is, do you understand pass protection? Do you understand concepts? And I think it's way harder than we realize. I think you see it a lot with NFL backs. Like, hey, we can't put him on the field. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so I think you're
Travion Henderson, supposedly with the Patriots, is that they think he's electric, but he can't do all the other stuff.
So I think as the season progresses, you will see more of the 2 young cats. But I think right now, to me, it is Whittington when he's healthy, Lamar, and then you're going to see Hill and Davidson be the splash players.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I just think that limits your ceiling then. I do.
And that may be the case. This is why I said, like, when I look at Washington, I think Washington has the better 3-punch. Jonah Coleman is better than anything that Oregon has in the backfield.
By a full tier and a half. Jonah Coleman might be a first-round pick, for real, as a running back.
And so, yes, there may be, going back to the start of the year when we both said that we liked Oregon to be a playoff team. We didn't know if we liked them to be a national title team. And then after 2 weeks, I looked around the country and I said, Oregon looks better than anyone. Mm-hmm. I will say that these last 2 weeks, and this could be a case of we've seen it enough. It could be a case of you're bored and we'll see what happens at Penn State. To me, that maybe has come back down a little bit because I don't know if maybe the ceiling is where I thought it was after 2 weeks. I don't know if there's a true difference maker in the backfield. I don't know if the defensive line, I think that will potentially be an issue. And again, that's why I said we'll find out about Penn State. So my thing is, these last 2 weeks, has this been about Northwestern and Oregon State, or is it about Oregon kind of being lazy and not wanting to play another patsy that they know that they can go out and win by 40? Right. We'll see this. But yeah, I'm with you that Whittington and Lamar are not they are not the star. But we see this all the time with national championship teams or college playoff teams where we see kind of the established guy, and then you look behind you, you're like, the freshman's better. Mm-hmm. I've played on teams that are like this, where you're like, hey, that guy's the starter, dude. This kid behind him is going to be better. And it just, Sadiq may be this guy, last year, he was playing with Ferguson in front of him. Ferguson's a nice player. He's an NFL tight end.
He's a second-round pick.
Exactly. But everyone knew when you were watching Sadiq, you were like, dude, that guy is going to be better than Ferguson, but it may take a little bit of time. And so that's where, to me, I think Lamar and Whittington are fine. I think they're good backs. They're not home run hitters. They're not the explosive guys. This isn't LaMichael. This isn't Kenyon. This isn't, any of the great Oregon backs that we've seen. Royce, we have been spoiled watching the Ducks. They have had some absolute studs, from Jonathan Stewart and going back to Ontario Smith, and it's been a who's who. Bucky Irvin, I thought, was criminally underrated. Yeah. And by the way, he ran with Whittington, and you were like, dude, when you watch those two guys, there's a reason Bucky's playing in the NFL. And so I that's where I will agree. Neither one of their backs right now, their 1-2 backs, are going to be the guys. But how nice is it that you think you have two more that are coming? Yeah. And so to me, that's just kind of like you mentioned with the pecking order. I think we're seeing the receiving pecking order sort itself out, and I think we've seen the back thing sort itself out. And maybe that evolves as the season goes, as those young guys get some more experience. But to me, it definitely seems that Lamar and Whittington will be the 1-2 guy. They will get the bulk of the carries as this thing goes on.
I thought, and I think you're right. I just think that limits the ceiling. I was kind of hoping we would see Hill and Davison emerge. I thought that was part of the problem with the lack of home runs against Oregon State. Yes, they wanted to keep everything in front, but when you're rotating guys, you don't get to get in a groove. You don't get like lathered up where it's like, feed me, 5-6. That is that Ezekiel Elliott thing that he does, that's real. It's I'm in a groove. I'm feeling it. I'm seeing the hole. I'm hitting the hole. When you're like, you're in for 2 carries. Okay, out. Oh, you're in for this carry. Nope. Okay, you're out. And it, me, you, him, and you're doing that thing. It does make it hard to get in a groove. And I do think if you'd have given De'Aaron Hill Lamar's carries in this game, he'd have had more yards by a good amount. He probably would have hit a couple home runs. The problem is he can't be that guy yet, clearly. Yeah. Just look
Otherwise
at his
he would be. Because,
he can't be the 15, 20 carry a game in the Big Ten guy.
He is the best. He is the best back. I will stake he will be, when this is all said and done, he will be Oregon's best running back, and it may just take time. And then the other one too is, as a freshman, we don't know. I'm not there at practice every day. I don't know how his body holds up. I don't know if they think, hey man, we got to save this. This is a long run. These first 4 games, and this, I can't stress this enough for any team like Oregon or even a team like Washington, you just haven't been pressed. And so there's no need for this. So we will see, we will learn more at Penn State than we did in these 4 weeks combined. And it's not even close. And then, and then Indiana, comes calling too. There's some, and all of a sudden, hey, I'll apologize. I said Indiana was a paper tiger. Well, I said Indiana and Illinois are paper tiger. Turns out one of that was right. And look, I'll give credit. Indiana and Mendoza look really good. And so all of a sudden on Oregon's, schedule, there's another one that we circle. We'll look, but all of a sudden, Penn State and then back-to-back with Indiana. Oh, don't sleep on Indiana. And then USC and Washington at the end. Washington, offense looks as good as anyone's in the country. I think USC still has the number 1 offense in the country. One of their best receivers is hurt.
And Washington can put points on anybody.
So, all of a sudden, we're going to find out here these next 2 weeks.
The schedule's hulking up. I want you've played and you've played on a lot of different kinds of teams in a lot of
good
different
teams, played
roles.
on bad teams.
I believe Dan Lanning when he says we really like our team. We have a really good team.
Yeah.
My question to you is, as a former player, I have heard other people say there are years where you know roughly, but your schedule doesn't really afford you the opportunity to know who you are. But you can believe, in your locker room, we're pretty good. Well, we don't know how good.
Yeah.
And then you have that game. I am of the belief that Dan Lanning means exactly what he said.
Yeah.
We need to test this group. We think internally we're pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But even we don't fully know. Do you think that's fair that they think, hey,
100%.
we think this team is really good, but we're not exactly sure how good we are?
100%.
Okay.
100%. When he says that, I don't think there is any horse crap or hyperbole in there at all. You don't know. If he was giving you truth serum, they haven't played. I'm literally trying to rack my head on this. There's not a single player at Oregon State that would start for Oregon.
I don't know if there's a single player right now that would be on Oregon's 2 deep. Okay. I'm being serious. When you look at, oof.
Yeah. And then I'm looking at Northwestern. Maybe Northwestern had a linebacker that was pretty good.
Wasn't there a corner? Wasn't there a corner that was pretty good?
Yeah, like you're looking through Northwestern, and it was corner or safety. So let's say Northwestern has two guys, maybe that would start or play on the 2 deep at Oregon.
What about that quarterback?
Yeah. Oh my God, was it Evan Stone or whatever that?
Preston Stone.
Preston Stone.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, dude, watching that guy throw. Oklahoma State might be the worst Power 4 team in the country. They don't have a player.
Nope.
And then who do they open with? Montana State? Not a single player.
No way.
So, so if we're being honest, do 4 games, and I'm not just trying to be an ass here. You're literally talking about maybe 3-4 players that would play combined on those teams that would play at Oregon.
Yeah, you're saying the all-star team of their opponents so far would consist of 3 dudes who were relatively even to the competition they lined up against.
Yeah. And Lanning knows that. He just does. So when you're sitting there and you're trying to evaluate your squad, it's like if I'm an old lineman, right? And I got a center and I got to reach a 1 technique, right? We're running an outside zone, or let's say let's do a better one. I got to reach a 3 technique, and we're in there, and so as a center, I got to reach the guy on the outside shoulder of my left guard, right? And that's a long for a center. Is what I played. That's a big ass stretch, right? I got to get on my horse. Yeah. I know when we're running outside zone, I'm hoping my quarterback checks and goes the other way, and we're like, nope, we're running here to the left. I'm like, shit, I got to go, right? And so I snap that and I go, and my left guard, maybe stabs that guy with an arm, and then I got to get going. And I watch that, and let's say I'm playing in these 3 games here, and I make that scoop every time. Right. I'm scooping. I dig that out and off we go to the races, and we've got nice runs. And I'm sitting there as a coach and I'm watching. I said, I think that Suke's pretty good. I know he's a pretty good center. I like him. He's a nice player. He makes that reach block. And then I look at the defensive tackles that he's reaching. And then I look at the defensive tackle at Penn State, and I'm like, does he reach him?
New test.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I think we can run zone into that. We'll have that. I've been in those meetings where I'm talking to my line coach, and he'd be like, can you reach that? And of course, I'm trying to be like all positive and be like, I can make that block. But even in my own head, I might be like, I don't know, it's a tough block. But I've made it. I've made it for a month straight. Mm-hmm. But that kid at Penn State, and I'm turning to my guard, by the way, and being like, hey, you son of a, like, this whole 1 stab and get up to the linebacker, the hell, you get a piece of him.
You get him. Yeah,
get him. Like, you don't give me an arm. I need you to rip through him. Because I'm going to need some extra time. And we might find out early in that game, guess what? We ain't running zone. Yeah. We ain't reaching that. It's and I'll go to the sideline and be like, dude, we got to go to the other side.
We can't get there.
We're not reaching that.
Yeah.
So, and those are all real things.
Yeah.
Those are all real things. And I just put that in context because I'm an old lineman. And so that's
that's good. It's good for people. It's good.
That's the world I would live in, or like in pass protection, right? where I look out there and we haven't had to chip. We haven't had to help one time on our tackles. Not a single time. I haven't had to slide my protection. The back's got the outside backer. He's fine. Well, all of a sudden, I'm looking at that and I'm like, hey, their outside backers look different. If Abdul Carter's sitting out there, guess what? We are sliding to him on the outside. And I know he's not there at Penn State anymore, but he was.
Well, no, now it's Danny Dennis Sutton. That's a first round pick. I mean,
the dude's legit. So all of a sudden, if he's out there and in the first 3 games, I can just say as an O-line, hey, I don't got to worry about that. Our tight end's out there or our back. All of a sudden, when we're in Penn State, we may have to change it. We may have to be like, hey, we're sliding our protection. And that means that the backside is going to be more vulnerable. So every one of those things is a very real conversation.
And with every unit. You're explaining the O-line, but the DBs are doing the same communicating now, and the linebackers and the D-line,
Yes. We're all having to have these conversations about things are going to change. So when I hear that Dan Lanning says he likes his team, I have no doubt. And quietly I have heard, and I heard this going into the season from someone that's very close to that program. They thought this team was better than last year's. And that was the team that was the number 1 team in the country. Mm-hmm. That we obviously ran into a buzzsaw against Ohio State, but a team that a lot of people thought could win a national championship. And they quietly were saying they think this team is better, but they don't know. And they'll find out.
They're certainly better along the offensive line and in the secondary by a lot. And those were some of the weaker areas last year. That secondary, it was billed as being quite good. And in reality, they were a little small. Safeties didn't make a ton of impact. Jabbar Muhammad, who is one of the only transfers who kind of went in as a day 2 guy and by the end wasn't. He wasn't special. He was okay. And, there was a feeling when they got him, I think, that he was potentially an All-American. And he wasn't an All-American. He was just very much okay. Yeah. Now they have real dudes in that secondary and real depth and the O-line. The question to me this year is, do you have a special running back? Yep. I worried about the receiver core. I'm not as worried anymore. I think they have a good group. Do I think it's incredible? I think it will be eventually. I think Dorian Moore's going to be incredible, but he is still a true freshman. So I don't put on him like he's an All-American. He's kind of not yet, but he will be. So he's very good. So I think the wide receiver room is good. I worried a little bit about the freshman DBs. I still think we don't know. Yes, they're very, very athletic. But there's a huge difference between what they've faced so far, to your point, and Jeremiah Smith.
Well, Indiana will test that. Like,
is it Chaz Surratt?
Yeah, I've watched Penn State, and I'm not as high on Penn State. Like, I have been very unimpressed. I have tried to watch. I've watched all 3 games for Penn State, and I came away with kind of like they're overwhelming teams that aren't very good. But Indiana's going to test you. Like Indiana's offense, I'll give them credit because Illinois is a good defense, and they made them look silly.
It's Elijah Surratt. Chaz Surratt is a different guy. Yeah,
they are going to test you. So we'll find out. That's right. That's how great is it? The secondary has been great all year.
Oh, but it's been so easy.
And they haven't played anyone that can. I mean, Oregon State didn't attempt to throw a ball downfield all game, and Northwestern couldn't throw a ball downfield all game. Right. Oklahoma State might be the worst offensive team I've seen in the country all year. So, we did talk
though in the preview. One of the things I said that I'm looking for, if you're looking for a little thing, Trent Walker's been electric, and they like to get him 9-10 catches. Yeah. He did nothing. And that's a good sign. I mean, that was the first receiver, because I said that they haven't played a receiver that's even functional really yet. This will be the first one, and they shut him down. That's a good early hurdle. Doesn't mean they can slow down Jeremiah Smith. No. Trent Walker's not Jeremiah Smith, but he was the best guy they've seen so far. Yeah. And instead of him having, that 8-catch, 65-yard game where you go, okay, they gave up some yards to him. That's a concern. Yeah. He could do nothing. That's a good sign. The D-line's my other concern. And I'll be honest, that first quarter against Oregon State, and you could say, stopping the run's about fire, and you can scheme up stopping the run. All they cared about was stopping Malik Murphy, so they just kind of went into their 4-2-5 and thought Vanilla would get it done, and they were a little caught off guard that it didn't work on that first drive or second drive, and then they buttoned it up. Fine. You shouldn't even necessarily need to button it up because Oregon State hasn't run on anybody. No. It doesn't mean they're bad. I'm not saying this D-line is bad. I don't think they are. They clearly have some talent. Amari Washington is an absolute freak. Tuioti did a really nice job against the run this week as an edge rusher. Bryce Betcher cleaned some stuff up, front seven guy. I don't know how good they're going to be against an elite run game. We haven't seen it yet. And teams who have said all we can do is run, like we have to establish the run, they've at times been able to push the line a little bit where you go, oh, that's interesting. Let's put a pin in that because the offensive lines are going to get better. It's the unanswered question that I think means this Penn State Oregon game is going to be close, I think. And I'm interested in how the D-line holds up because I still have that as a question mark. Everything else, Dante Moore, he's good. Now, we haven't seen him on the road in a big environment, but we can say skills-wise, he's a good player. He can make all the throws. We know the receiving core. We know the running back rotation, fine. It's a BB+, whatever. It's still a good group. The O-line looks pretty good. Secondary looks strong. Linebackers, we know who they are. It's that D-line. That's the question. And it's going to get tested against Penn State. It is. And we're going to find out. And I'll tell you what, if they can stop the run against Penn State, it will totally change my view of this whole team. I will go from if Penn State just suddenly can't run the football, and not that they throw for 400 yards, but if they kind of keep Penn State's offense in check, my projection for this team totally changes.
Yeah.
I go from saying, okay, I think kind of some of these pieces are a little young. There's a Dier Hill all over the roster in the sense that they have a whole bunch of really good freshmen and sophomore. I think next year might be kind of the year. If they slow down Penn State and Penn State can't really move the football, that changes your view of the defense. And it's okay, they were playing pretty vanilla those first 4 weeks. This is potentially a national title team. And it's going to be interesting. Is there any one area for you other than D-line, or even if you want to talk about the D-line, when you look at this Oregon team that you say, this group is going to be tested and I really need to see something?
I mean, I would say it almost across the board. I mean, we talked about it. I want to see that there hasn't been a single team that has threatened Oregon downfield, and we've seen some blown coverages, right? We have seen some moments in the back half where the coverage isn't exactly buttoned up, right? So I want to see what happens when you play a real offense that's going to stress you. I want to see what happens. Oregon wants to play in this 4-2-5. I'm not certain that against better teams that you can stay in that. And maybe that, again, that's a D-line and a linebacker thing. You know, I mean, maybe you put those two things together. And we know that there's one really good linebacker on the team, and it appears that there's another one that's coming that's playing better and better week to week. In fact, I think he was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week against Northwestern. So, like, it's there. But again, I want to see it against a squad. Can you stay in your base defense and play? I want to see Dante Moore get some pressure. He has had as comfortable a run as you could possibly. When's the last time you saw him under pressure?
Yeah, don't.
It just doesn't. It doesn't happen.
Can we talk about his deep ball?
Yeah, we can talk about. The
put some air under that thing, young man.
Yeah, and then some of that is like I think sometimes he's got just an absolute cannon back there, and he throws it easily. But again, let's see it when there's pressure put on him. So I want to see this across the board. I think the world of Oregon and was really impressed. And I thought through the first couple weeks of the season, they looked like the best team in the country. The last 2 weeks, I think they've looked like all the other really good teams in the country.
That's a good way to put it.
That's the way, because I've watched Ohio State, I've watched Texas, I've watched LSU, I've watched Alabama, I've watched. I don't think there's a team now that's in the top 25 that I haven't had a good long look at. I try really hard to make sure that I'm watching a wide variety of football and I don't get caught up in just a West Coast bias thing. And I thought Oregon looked better than everyone else. And I think the last 2 weeks, it's been more of they look like the other really good teams in the country. They look like the Penn States. They look like the Ohio States. They look like the LSUs. The difference is for most of those teams, they've played somebody. And Penn State hasn't, which is why, again, I'm so intrigued. Penn State's coming off the bye and Penn State has played no one. And Oregon isn't coming off a bye and they have to go on the road and they've played absolutely no one. Right. This exact conversation, if we were having a central to Eastern Pennsylvania bias podcast right now, all the things we're saying right now, you could say about Penn State.
It's true.
And which is why I think this is going to be so fun. So to say that there's a group that I want to see tested, every single one of them, I think will be tested. And I want to see how they do. And I'm not ready to say that, any one of them I'm 100% certain is going to pass with flying colors. If there's one I'll say, I think the O-line's really good. But like Isaiah World, I think Harkey's actually been the better of the two. Which is interesting because Isaiah World was supposed to be this, the top 10 pick, and the dude's an absolute.
The Isaiah World thing is weird. He's good. And let's start there. The argument was that he didn't give up sacks. And I go back to this with scouting because I think it's important for people to understand. There was a player, and I think he played for Alabama a few years ago. Yeah. And it was an SEC power school. It might have been Georgia. Yeah. And for his career as a center, he'd given up no sacks.
Yeah.
So he goes into the league, and that was the stat. And people who didn't know were like, oh, he's one of the top centers. Yeah. His PFF grade was the lowest for pass protection of any center who had ever entered the draft, like a draft class, and actually been like at the combine and was a part of it. He had the lowest PFF grade of any combine center in the history of PFF grading. Yeah. He was a terrible pass protector. So the stat on Isaiah World, he's not terrible, was 0 sacks allowed. Yeah. That is not a good gauge. Yeah. And underlying stat, he was at Nevada, and he had a whole bunch of holding penalties and false starts. That's getting beat. And rather than giving up the sack, you hold. Yeah. So this idea that he was like a wall, an impenetrable wall, was not accurate.
Yeah. And so when I watch him, he's good.
He is good. He is good.
I think Harkey has been, and he was the unheralded guy from Texas State. I think he's been better.
PFF has rated him out as being better in multiple games. Yeah.
So and so it just there's not a group that I'm not ready that I'm going to sit here and say is end all to be all, including the O-line, which I feel really, really good about. But again, go show me now. Well, you've put it on film. I think you're one of the. I thought you were the best team in the country. I can't say you're the best team in the country. I don't think there's anyone that looks better than you right now. I'll say that you're as good as anyone in the country. Now go prove it. Now you're on the road against Penn State. Go prove it. Next 2 weeks, Indiana. Ooh, God, that was an impressive performance. I really was impressed, and I didn't want Indiana to be good. I hate the way they schedule.
I know.
I don't like some of the crap they say, but hey, man,
they're so well coached.
Big eye in the sky don't lie, and they are so well coached, and they have a real quarterback. And their scheme, when you watch what they do offensively, God, they stress you at every single level, and they put your nuts in a vice. And you try to take away underneath stuff, we go over the top. Their passing tree concepts are brutal. They're just really, really good.
And really well run. I mean,
and they made a good Illinois defense with NFL talent look simple, slow, and have no answers. So, look, it's possible that the Penn State game is the best overall test because I think Penn State is a talent standpoint is obviously closer to Oregon than Indiana. But if you want the best test for Oregon, I don't think it's going to be against Penn State. The real test is going to be not Penn State. The real test for the defense is going to be Indiana. Indiana will put Oregon, especially those young DBs, with some of the coverage issues they've had, like as breakdowns. Dude, if you're not buttoned up on the back end, Indiana will make you look silly because they are running concepts. They will flood zones, and they have all these wonderful little concepts and crossing routes where they're making people pass stuff off and.
They make you communicate big time.
And if you don't communicate, they will leave a guy running wide open and they will hit it. And they make people look, they make bad teams or undisciplined teams. They did it last year and they're doing it this year. They make, if you are not buttoned up, which is why bad teams get rolled against them, undisciplined teams. So, we'll see.
I think you're safe. Exciting. I think you're safe with your USC Washington over Indiana, Illinois. Because I think Illinois is bad. I think Illinois is a fraud. Yeah. But the one caveat I had with that in the preseason was that Indiana team's pretty good, man. I think you might be sleeping on them, and they've really impressed me.
And I'm the first one to raise my hand and been like, nope, wrong. Thought Clemson was going to be a national title type contending team.
That was my pick.
Clemson effing sucks.
Terrible.
Clemson is an embarrassment, and that program is on a slide. So I mean, we can only go with the knowledge that's put before us. And it's so much harder in college because stuff changes so much year to year,
especially with the portal,
with the portal. And, Florida State is one of the worst teams in the country last year. And all of a sudden Florida State comes out and it's an entirely new roster. And it's not made up of like 5-star portal kids, but neither is Indiana, but it's the right kids. And all of a sudden Florida State looks like a completely different team. Which is why, like, if you're a program, that's kind of on the skids a little bit, know that you're one coach and one portal class away from being able to put yourself back on the map. Mel Tucker did this one year with Michigan State.
Right.
Right. And he
it's a good point. It's a great point.
Kenneth Walker Jr. I think they had like 36 kids that came in that year. Colorado went from the most irrelevant team in the country to at least a competitive team. And granted, they ended up with Travis Hunter and a quarterback in Sanders. But again, completely revamped and rebuilt their team. So no matter how bad it gets in today's world, you can, and not just with the Oregon kids being able to go out and spend $30 million or 20 or whatever the hell someone wants to throw out there, you can rebuild this with, Indiana was built with James Madison kids, for God's sakes. And, they went out and they got Cal's quarterback, right? That doesn't cost you $3 million. And all of a sudden they found his guys and it looks good. So again, I just, for any program, and that's from Oregon State, Washington State, anybody that thinks, oh, the sky's falling and there's no way we can do this, horse shit.
Right. And that's why it drives me nuts. That's why
proven.
It drives me nuts that this whole thing is like, well, Trent Bray was dealt a bad hand and it takes time to rebuild it doesn't anymore. And that's the thing is, like, if you have the right guy as a coach pretty quickly, and you may not know if he's the guy, but if you have a guy that you want to be around. Yeah, Trent Bray in 14 games, 15, 16 games, whatever it is, you can tell he's not it.
Washington got gutted as bad as anyone could get gutted, from the portal to your coach to the NFL, right? You played for the national title team. It was the most talented team you've had in Washington in 20 years, right? And you were a player two away. You were one horse crap holding call away from maybe being in that game against Michigan, right? Penix Jr. had the ball down the side and they got called back for, I think it was Rosengarten, one of the worst holding calls you've ever seen. And their program gets decimated, right? Entire O-line leaves to the NFL, leaves in the portal. Your coach leaves. You lose everything. Fish comes in. You're trying to hold it together. You kind of scrap together something last year. And you go and get, with Will Rogers out of Mississippi State, and you kind of throw it together, and it's kind of an ugly year, and you're losing games you shouldn't lose to. And all of a sudden this year, you look up and you've got a real offense. You've got, I think, the second or third best offense in the country. And yeah, the defense isn't quite where you want it to be. And I think, if something holds you back this year, it's going to be that. I think the defense is okay. But in the span of, and you took the worst offensive line. Washington's offensive line was so god-awful bad. And you look at the offensive line this year, it's a good offensive line. Look at the PFF grades. They're pass protecting. They have two real tackles. They got freshmen that are playing along that line.
And you nailed that John Mills pick. You said that freshman's got a chance to be an All-American, and man, he sure looks like one.
And they look good.
Yeah.
And and they've got a quarterback that's going to continue to get better. And so you took a program that was absolutely gutted, that could have fallen on their ass and could have taken 4 years to wallow in self-pity of woe is me. And they didn't. They took their lumps for 1 year and they said, hey man, we're going to come back this year. And no one's talking about them. They're still not ranked. And now they got Ohio State coming in and they got a chance to kind of give everyone the bird. And I don't think you have to necessarily win that game against Ohio State. I think where Oregon and Washington are still two very different things. Oregon, obviously is expected to win this game against Penn State, at least in my opinion. If Oregon wants to be what they are, I don't think Washington's trying to win a national title this year. I think Washington's trying to prove that, hey, last year was a fluke and we're back and we can be competitive. If they play this thing, I'm not saying there's moral victories for anyone in college football, but if they take Ohio State and they push Ohio State into the fourth quarter and this is a close loss, I think that's going to be, to me, Washington. I mean, I don't expect you to beat Ohio State. I just don't. I don't think your defense is good enough.
No.
But, if you put up 35 against Ohio State, and let's say you lose, 42-35, or God forbid 45-35, like you lose by 10.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it and you say, our offense can score against anyone in the country. Our defense is still a work in progress. The defense hopefully is going to come along. And eventually by the end of the year, if that defense is playing a little bit better and our offense continues to kind of grow and develop, because they've got some young guys and receivers that are still coming up to go with their big three. I just think Washington's a great example of, hey, what happened to you sucks. Gutted, decimated. I mean, they I don't even know. Like from the NFL to the transfer portal, I mean, it was something like 50 losses from that national title team.
And they hired Fish, and the whole thing was in the preseason. Arizona that year was like 9th, 10th, 11th. Yeah. So they thought, oh, they're going to bring all those kids.
They didn't.
And then they couldn't.
No.
And so their plan is like, we're just going to restock and we'll just take Arizona's roster. They got a few guys, obviously, but they didn't. They didn't get
Noah Fafita didn't come.
T-Mac didn't come. McMillan didn't come. I mean,
took a year for the the corner and the linebacker to come. So there's it's a work in progress, but I'm stoked. I'm equally excited about Oregon, Penn State, and as I am Washington and Ohio State. I'm not writing Washington off.
I'm not as excited because I think Oregon, Penn State is actually a coin flip. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not as excited because I think I know Ohio State's going to beat Washington.
I do too. I want to see Washington's offense.
Me too.
I want to see Washington's offense against Penn State. And if they put up points and they lose that game, I still walk away from that game if I'm Washington being like, hey, dude, we are in this. Because Washington's schedule, Maryland, who actually looks halfway decent, Rutgers, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA, and Oregon. You put up 30 plus against Ohio State, even as a loss. If you're Washington, you're sitting there and say, boys, we got a chance to make the end of the year really interesting. And that's all I wanted. All I want at the end of the year is that Oregon-Washington game to mean something.
It's going to.
And I think there's a chance, I really do, that is a game with implications, maybe on both sides. And I think that would be awesome.
I think it would be different. It would be a different version for each team. Yeah. I think you could have a scenario where it's a one-loss Oregon against a one-loss Washington. Now, I don't think that means they're the same level.
No.
Because Oregon has Penn State, and then they'd have to play Indiana, and they'd have to beat USC. Sure. Washington's schedule is really soft, and that's why we said in the preseason they might be a borderline college football playoff team. And people are like, oh, that's so stupid. They're going to lose. Let's just play it out. They lose to Ohio State.
Yeah.
They should win every other game on their schedule, right? Except for maybe Michigan.
Let's say they shoot themselves in the foot against Michigan or Illinois or whatever, right? And that's all I'm saying is.
So then they're a 2-loss team.
They're a 2-loss team
when they play Oregon.
Going into Oregon, and if you're a 2-loss team in the Big Ten and you find a way, and by the way, that is in Seattle, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
If you find a way to be a 2-loss team and your 2 losses are Ohio State and Michigan, and you've looked good doing it, and you manage to find a way to beat Oregon at the end of the year, you're in the conversation. And that's like, I don't think
they're in the playoff.
I don't think Washington's a playoff team. I really don't. But I think there's a chance at the end of the year, if things go their way and the defense gets better, I think there's a chance that they are going to make this interesting. I want the defense. The defense has to grow up. Watching that Apple Cup, and look, give Washington State credit. Washington State, played really hard, and like I said, they found a quarterback. But I need Washington's defense to be more buttoned up, and they got turnovers at the end of that. Big pick from the secondary guy, McLaughlin, who's been a great addition for them. He came over from like Northern Arizona, and they expected that guy to be a depth piece. And he was just one of those guys that early on was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to be a depth piece. I'm going to be a starter. He's been great. You're starting to see a little bit of the pass rush start to sneak in a little bit. There's still some depth coming when they get some guys back from injury. Durfee's starting to play a little better. So I think this is a defense that just has to kind of keep growing and evolving. And if it does, I really like Washington's offense. I really like it. And the other one too, with Demond Williams, he just has to stop making, he's got to stop playing Kyler Murray and realize that sometimes not every play needs to be a home run.
Yep.
I think unfortunately he takes a lot of negative
structure.
Yep. But God, he's fun to watch.
He's really fun
when he's running around. And Coleman and Boston are just absolute, houses for them. So I'm excited. I'm still bullish on Washington. Maybe I'll be a little less bullish if Ohio State goes into UW and kicks their teeth in. I have a sinking feeling that game's going to be more competitive than some people are giving them credit for.
So here's my thing. Like, okay, so let's play it out. Say Ohio State beats them 42-10.
Yeah.
That's a good Ohio State team.
Yeah.
It's a good Ohio State team. So does that mean they can't beat Rutgers? Does that mean look at where they were last year?
Yeah.
I mean, if they lose 42-10 to Ohio State and they end up going 8-4 this year, because again, it's a pretty favorable schedule, that's real progress because you have real pillars.
Yeah.
Denzel Boston is maybe the number one receiver in this draft. Remember, Coleman, Jeremiah Smith, and Ryan Williams are not eligible until 2027. So there's kind of a gap where there's more talent at receiver in college football than there can be in the draft, which is weird. But Denzel Boston could be the number one receiver taken. He's unbelievable. His ability to go up and high point of football. He's better at that than Tet McMillan was on film. He is. Tet, that was the thing. He's big bodied. He actually is really good at a lot of the underneath stuff. He's not real good over the top, and you think he would be because he's this volleyball player and this great, but he wasn't great at high point in the football. He just wasn't. Boston really can do it, and Boston can kind of do all of it. Jonah Coleman, one of the things I love about a running back is if a team is just dead set on stopping you, and you can still get, 4 yards a carry, that's good. But if you can find other ways to make plays, that means you're a pretty good running back. He had 100 receiving yards against Washington State. And I know it's Washington State, but they were sold out to stop him in the run. And he had, he averaged 4 yards a pop running the football, and then he had 100 yards receiving. Great players find a way to produce. You put two guys on me and I'm a receiver, I'm still going to catch some balls. I might not house a whole bunch, but I'm gonna get my 8 catches. You can't stop me. I'm too good. Jonah Coleman's in that tier right now. And you know what? We knew he was last year when he went, okay, I have one of the worst offensive lines in the entire country. And I'm still going to run for 1,000 yards. And if you're that good a back, you're special. And now that offensive line matches him. And then you get Demond Williams Jr. I'm sorry. Dante Moore's a better prospect. And I think that's fair for what the pros do. Demond Williams Jr. is the most exciting quarterback in college football. Yeah. We've watched all these guys. We've watched all the hype about all these dudes. And if you're just watching the highlights reel of somebody and you could pick one guy to be your highlight reel guy, Demond Williams Jr. is it. Yeah. And by the way, if you could pick one guy to be your video game character quarterback, you'd pick him. He can run. He's electric. He's got a big arm. He throws the ball downfield. He stretches it vertically. If you cover everything, he can run and spin and flip. And I mean, he's fun to watch, man. That's a really fun team. I don't think they're necessarily arrived yet, but because the schedule's easy and because they have so much electricity, they're going to be a factor in games. And if you make the mistake of saying like, it's Washington, they weren't very good last year, you're in trouble because this Washington team, the front seven's still a work in progress, but everywhere else they're pretty good. And by the way, that secondary is starting to figure it out. Yes. And when they fully are cohesive, they're going to be really good. And it's going to be an interesting test with Jeremiah Smith, obviously.
Yeah. So I'm geeked. This is what we've been waiting for all year, at least for me. This is the week that I have circled. And now it's finally here. We get USC actually starting to get into some real games too, which is fun because let's not forget about the little Trojans down south. They had a nice test against Michigan State and ended up passing that, and they're quietly putting together again one of the better. And I think it was after or going into this week, it was the number one offense in the country.
And was Washington too?
Yeah, I think depending on what you want to do, yards, you want to do points, whatever metric. Yeah, they're two of the top 3 to 4 offenses in the country. And I know some of the shine has come off Illinois a little bit, but USC is at Illinois. So if we saw what Indiana did to them, put them in a blender. So this may be another one. All of a sudden, if you're USC, does USC go on the road and kick the hell? USC these next 3 weeks, they have Illinois, Michigan, Notre Dame. And whatever you think of those schools, it's still 23, 19, and 22 right now. Mm-hmm. And then Nebraska. So USC is entering. Wow.
They play the land of pretender.
The land of pretender.
Four straight in the land of the pretender.
So USC's got some fun stuff coming up. And, we mentioned with Oregon, everyone, was circling this Penn State game. Keep an eye on Indiana. Like all of a sudden, like no one paid any attention. We were like, oh, Penn State. Dude, I'll tell you what, the Illinois game certainly woke me up. All of a sudden, I'm looking at that being like, hell yeah, Indiana, let's go. Because then we're back to, some snoozers for a while with Rutgers, Wisconsin, who ended up firing Luke Fickell. He freaking sucks. But Yeah, it's we're getting into the fun part. We're getting into the fun part of the season now, at least out here on the West Coast. I wish Oregon had a little more meat on the bone after those 2 games. Like, we're going to feast here for the next couple weeks, and then unfortunately we're going to go right back to these sorts of games. And I hate having to talk about, I don't want to talk about Rutgers in Wisconsin. Like, I'll tell you right now, both of those games are 48-14.
What's the name of the show again?
Yeah, West Coast bias. Like,
I don't want to talk about Wisconsin or Rutgers.
They just give me, they're any good. They're not going to be. So at least for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to revel in the fact that I get to talk about real football with Penn State and Indiana, and then Ohio State at UW and USC. Throw USC some love. Undefeated for all the shit that Lincoln Riley gets. Hey, undefeated and taking care of business.
It's going to be funny if they run through that onslaught that we thought in preseason was pretty good and now looks like it's not great with Notre Dame in it and, Illinois. And then they go 4-0 and everybody, through that stretch and people go, oh, USC is so great. And then they lose to some of the good teams. They'll be the king of the land of the pretender. Can you hear my phone going completely nuts? Do you hear all those pings?
No.
Okay. So I'm getting pings in my headphones because my phone's going nuts.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa has a torn ACL. And my phone has exploded in the last 10 minutes, and I keep getting ping, 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 ping. Yeah. So if I look distracted, it's because my phone is going nuts.
Yeah, they said that they thought that initial tests were that he avoided the ACL tear.
Right. And well, so maybe it turns out the Niners doctors maybe not the best.
Just that, dude. That poor team, that absolute poor team. And you saw like Bosa gave the thumbs down, which is usually not a great indicator. Man, that sucks because they're a great story and they're finding themselves, and that defense has been a revelation. And you just wonder at some point, man, enough's enough. I mean, it's
tough because you're 3-0 and you feel good about that in some ways. And then at the same time, like, Christian McCaffrey hasn't gotten hurt yet, and that feels like it's inevitable at some point in the year. They're just too banged up to be a factor. And so, it's nice. Like this week's game, 16-15 over Arizona. It's a nice win. If you lose Bosa to a torn ACL, in terms of season projection, isn't the same as if you lost to Arizona. Like that's brutal.
It's huge. It's huge. So they're going to keep fighting next man up. Their defense has been really good, but again, at some point, just the damn burst, enough's enough, and they're putting a ceiling on where they're going to go. But hey, they're fun. 3-0 right now. They're finding ways.
If you had to for the rest of the year after watching the Seahawks just dismantle the Saints and Torrey Horton becoming the dude that we thought he might be in preseason, would you still? We talked about that this division is going to be very difficult to predict. Yeah. If you had to right now through what you've seen, especially with the Seahawks defense that's every bit as good as we thought with some pieces missing, would you take the Seahawks to win the division? Would you take the Rams still?
The Rams are the best team. The Rams might be the best team in the NFL.
Okay.
The Rams are so good. How they lost that game, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you watched it, but they were just marching down at will, and then they couldn't get it done on third down. And Stafford he wasn't very accurate on third down, and they kept settling for field goals. And it was one of those like, man, this game should be a 4-touchdown game. I do hear those pings now. It should have been a blowout. And when you let teams hang around, see Chargers, Broncos, you let teams hang around, bad shit happens at the end. But the Rams, to me, when the Rams are fully operational, they're as good as anyone in football. And the Rams are I think the world of the Rams. I'm just not certain. And I wonder how healthy Stafford is. Some of the there it is. Some of the overthrows and that came back and cost him. But no, I'm not ready to say that anyone in that division other than the Rams is the correct answer until Matthew Stafford officially just blows something out. So I'm still a Rams guy. And I said, if he plays 14 games, that's a Super Bowl team. And I'm standing by that, because if the Eagles are the best team and you watch that game, and I know it, hey, scoreboard is what it is. The Rams are better than the Eagles. They just are. And they somehow managed to, the Eagles have some sort of voodoo, which they're the new Chiefs. The Chiefs would get outplayed for 3 quarters and then they just had something, and that's Philly. Doesn't look great. It's not pretty, but I give the Eagles all the props in the world. Dude, they just find ways to hang in there and pull out games. So I just think that right there, that you saw maybe the NFC title game, which, last year, the Rams had them, except for, again, they couldn't make a block on one play. So that's the class of the NFC. I'm not ready to say that Seattle is, I mean, come on, it's the Saints. The Saints are so very bad, and the Steelers aren't good either. So
no,
we'll see what happens.
I got one more. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it. The Seahawks schedule is pretty. They don't really play a lot of elite teams for a while. So we'll see what happens. They need to stack some W's here because it's a very manageable schedule.
Going back to the Niners, because this is going to be a major thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever been on a team that was good that had either a key injury middle of the year or like several key injuries in the middle of the year? Like, I wonder from your perspective, what the Niner locker room must feel like right now. Purdy, Kittle. I mean, one, is there a lack of trust in the health staff at this point, do you think, in that locker room? Do you think they think it's a fluke? What do you think they think in the locker room?
You know what? There can be a little bit of like a woe is me, but I promise you in a week, no one will remember it. We think that these things have bigger impacts than they do. Guys are professionals. Guys are playing for their lives. Guys are playing for their jobs. And there really is, Bosa will get surgery and will be away from the team. And it's shocking how fast you will move on. Now you obviously you're going to feel it on the field, and there may be a point when you're watching, game film and you're like, my God, like if we just had that. But on a day-to-day operational thing, it's amazing how quick people move on. It really is. With the exception of quarterback can be like the Bengals right now.
I was just gonna say the Bengals.
The Bengals are broken because that's a guy that, like, you see the ball in his hands every single time. Like, Bosa, you'll notice, obviously there'll be a difference, but you'll still play defense and it still be a good defense and it'll suck, but it's not like
the Cowboys. You don't think it'll be the Cowboys where it suddenly becomes just I don't. They lost one guy and lost one guy. You can feel it. I mean,
well, again, I just think that operationally and from from an organizational standpoint, Saleh and the Niners, they're just more buttoned up. The Cowboys are a mess, and they want it to be that way. Is the only time that the head coach doesn't have a press conference and the owner does. It's the Cowboys. They're not a serious organization. The Niners are. Look, these are damning injuries, and you're not getting where you need to go without players like that, especially when they take up that portion of your cap. The Niners aren't going to a Super Bowl without Nick Bosa. They probably weren't going to a Super Bowl with Nick Bosa. But do I think that the Niners all of a sudden are going to fall apart? No, I don't. I think they'll still play good defense, but when they play against the elite teams, this is where this stuff shows up. Like you can win against bad teams. You can win against okay teams without your horses. You really can. But when you play the teams that aren't going to beat themselves, and look, the Niners have beaten the Seahawks, the Saints, and the Cardinals, right? This isn't the Rams, the Eagles, and the Bills. When you play Buffalo, you need Nick Bosa a half a dozen times in a game to say this drive is over, right? This, instead of first in or I guess it would be 2nd and 7, it is now going to be 2nd and 13.
Right.
And at the end of a game when it's 15-16. And we saw this the last couple of weeks.
And the Saints game, he got sacks in the fourth.
Where you just said ball game, closers.
Yep.
And that's where this stuff will show up. You won't necessarily see it week to week against the Jags or against the Falcons or whatever. But when you're playing the Rams, when you're playing, those elite teams, that's where it'll show up. And I think for the Niners is the schedule, again, is so very soft. So, I think without Bosa, I still think this can be a team that can get to the playoffs. But, you'll notice it when they play the better teams.
Yeah. I think that does it for us this week. We put in anytime we start going over an hour, I'm like, okay, we probably should pump the brakes. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Give us a like, give us a 5-star review, write a rating. All of that helps a ton. We will be back later in the week to preview a little more in depth some of these games because there's a big slate. We're also going to go a little deeper into the NFL, but it kind of feels like we're having a shift where we're doing a lot more college than we were NFL, and that's kind of just where the passion lies in terms of our audience right now. So we're going to continue to do some Niners and Seahawks, but we keep hearing about people want to talk Ducks, Huskies, Beavs, Cougs, Trojans, Bruins. So give the people what they want. Thank you, Suke, and we'll do it again soon.
See you later this week.